This recording is for informational purposes only. It does not constitute legal, financial, or investment advice.
The views expressed are those of the hosts and guests and do not represent any organization, including Bank of North Dakota. Please seek professional guidance before making financial decisions.
Welcome to 701 Chain, FinTech for Financial Institutions. We are your hosts. I'm Michael Lehn.
And I'm Devon Smith. Each episode, we explore new ideas, share practical insights, and highlight ways financial institutions can bring innovation to their everyday operations. Today, we're joined by the president of the Commercial Bank of Mott, Charlotte Aldinger. Welcome, Charlotte.
Thank you.
So I think really to kick it off, we want to ask you as a community banker, how do you feel about stablecoins?
That's such a huge question because I would say I'm scared, but I also know that the reality is there. Stablecoins is such a huge term and it gets intertwined with all of the digital assets and cryptocurrency. And I think it has that negative connotation. So it just scares you that, yeah, it's coming and how do you prepare for it? And will I still be relevant in the financial world as this comes down the pipeline? So I have a lot of mixed emotions, let's say, but mostly afraid of what it's going to look like.
And that fear, what does that fear look like? Like what makes you afraid of them?
You know, what makes me afraid is, what would be my use case or what is my biggest fear? And I think that's the general consumer, them, they're bringing their day-to-day paycheck in and their payroll in, like that's normal course of business. Like that comes into your bank account.
Absolutely.
But unfortunately, I also see it leaving almost immediately sometimes. And then that's going straight into a different app or a different wallet that they have on their phone. And so that's a concern, long-term, maybe immediate. Okay, we can deal with this. But long-term, as additional wallets and different avenues come forth, how are we going to be able to maintain that relationship, become relevant? And inevitably, as a community bank, how do we support your community? I mean, from that standpoint. So,
no. And as you know, because you were in attendance, we just concluded with our roadshow. And we tried to kind of lay out what our vision is for Roughrider Coin. And knowing our vision and just with talking with all of our community bankers across the state, did that, I guess, change how you feel with stablecoins? Or I shouldn't say on the macro side stablecoins, but with Roughrider Coin?
Yeah, I would definitely say it was helpful. I would say that when it was first introduced, to be honest, I was caught off guard. I think I was expecting maybe something different that was more at the consumer level of, how we would explore that option as a community bank. And so I think the roadshow was helpful. I really got a lot from it because I was with a smaller group. We had really good conversations. And I'm sure each of the events were a little bit different from the standpoint of, different membership there asking different questions.
Yeah.
But I learned a lot. And I also thought it was good to really narrow in on what is the Roughrider Coin versus stablecoin versus tokenized deposit. Because I think we're all getting wrapped up in the bigger picture of this. But I think we need to reel it back in from an education standpoint, not just at the consumer level, but at the bank level. Like, what is the Roughrider Coin?
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's kind of what we discussed earlier. The whole model that we have built for this first phase of Roughrider is so incredibly vanilla because they're safe transactions and they're transactions that we know happen every day. So it's very easy, but it's very, very narrow. And we're not going to get to your solutions with phase one. It's not going to happen. These are bank-to-bank transactions that happen every day on the back end. What we want to do is make sure in the future, when you have that customer that wants to take their money immediately out once they get their ACH for their paycheck, maybe you have that solution for that customer. That's kind of the goal of Roughrider. And so, the vanilla first use case is it kind of has to get done. And then we can start getting into the more practical things in the future.
Absolutely. I joked, but was serious that, there's a level of understanding and trust that the consumer has, with the president of the bank or anybody that works in the bank.
Absolutely.
And so when the consumer is coming in because they saw the press, can I invest in a stable coin or how do I get the stable coin? You just had this like blank look, like, it's not a coin, it's
Yeah.
not a thing, you know. So how do you explain that in general terms it's a method or a payment rail, you know? And so that, I think, really understanding and backing into it that way, I thought was very helpful.
Mhm.
Because yeah, there's a lot of those in upper management across the state that are maybe too afraid to ask the questions,
Yeah.
to understand it. But I'm here to say that I'm not afraid to ask the questions because I don't get it. And I've
Sure.
sat through a lot of these. I've done research, I've listened to podcasts and different things throughout this time frame, and I'm waiting for that aha moment.
Yeah.
It's not here yet. So I have a lot of questions,
Yeah.
not just the Roughrider, but in general. So
Yeah. And I think we should put it out there to the world. Like consumers, you cannot have a Roughrider stablecoin. I'm sorry. You just can't have one right now. So in the future, but not now.
Yeah, and I think, knowing how it evolves or gets kind of entwined within our financial institutions right now it's just another payment rail. You look at it in comparison to your traditional rail systems, a wire, an ACH, and now we are creating a Roughrider Coin, which essentially is just another rail. It's utilizing stablecoins, which is a digital asset, but with utilizing Roughrider stablecoin, um, it's going to be cheaper, faster, and more secure.
and those are all three very big areas that I think we'll have to eventually tap into. You know, I go down to the basics of, what does this look like in terms of day-to-day operations? What does my operations department need to be prepared for? Is this a new system that they need to, get access to? Kind of what does that look like? But then also, because we use Bank of North Dakota as a correspondent and those other relationships, is what does that look like at the end of day?
Yeah.
My end of day means that I'm sending out my cash letter, my clearing, I'm sending these files. So does this mean another file? Does this mean more work? Does it all blend together? More of that side of things. And then there's compliance and all that too. But I think of, operationally, does this make sense for us? And
Yeah.
how does that going to work?
Yeah, and I think the stage that Roughrider is going to roll out in, it's not going to solve the cash letter entries at the end of the day. That's not where it's at yet. In the future, maybe, but that's not where it's at yet. Really, what it is to Michael's point, a parallel rail. So operationally, if you're a bank that uses BND access and you want to send a wire in ACH, typically you log in, you'd use your token. If you're doing a wire, excuse me, it might have dual authentication or anything like that. The only thing that's going to change is you're just going to have a third option, and it's just going to be Roughrider Coin. And from there, you'll go in and you'll have a drop down of other banks that accept Roughrider Coin. You'll select whichever one you need to send it to. You'll select the amount. It will then mint those stable coins and then send them along the blockchain to that other participating bank in the consortium.
And I would just add, just so there's better understanding, is when we talk about minting, right? Everyone knows, or at least, everyone knows that all of our financial institutions operate on the US dollar. So we refer to that in the digital asset world as fiat currency. So when we talk about minting, it's just taking, in its simplest form, taking fiat currency and swapping it out or converting it into a digital asset. So that's minting. And then to Devon's point, when you send it, it's being sent on the blockchain and received by whoever you're sending it to. They are receiving it in the digital asset form. More times than not, whoever's receiving it wants it back in fiat or US dollar. So when you transition it back when you transition that digital asset back to fiat currency, that's considered a burn. So just to kind of bring some more of the terminology, and I guess to the table, and just again going back to the clarity.
Yeah.
But I think as you use those terms, my blood pressure increases a little bit in regards to, do I have to mint? Do I
Right.
have to burn? Like, all of those make sense in terms of the smart contract and how this all plays out. at the end of the day, I have an account on my general ledger. This is what it shows. But in terms of converting it to this coin and then converting it back, like that sounds overwhelming.
Yeah.
So just knowing that at the end of the day, it's just a process. It's another file that goes and then everything comes back. And I'm not stuck with this just reserve amount of money that I can't use. And it's dedicated to this, similar to like what the reserve requirement was before. Like
Absolutely.
It's not that.
Right.
Right. And just know all of the complexities. Bank of North Dakota is working behind the scenes to make it a very seamless transition or a seamless transaction for our financial institutions. Going back to how Devon was talking about right now, some of your staff going into B&D access and starting to originate a wire or an ACH, it's going to be the exact same process, just more. It's going to be quicker, cheaper, and safer.
The safer thing. We have to talk about it, you guys.
So I think, well, it'd probably be a bad idea to go into how somebody could actually do that. But the realities of the wallet infrastructure is these wallets are wallets that we have white labeled. We have said okay to, and they can only be banks or financial institutions. We have KYC'd all of our customers already, so we already know that they're good. So there's no possibility for you to accidentally send, say you messed up a routing number sending a wire. That's not possible in this framework. So, and then we're going to have dual authentication. And then there's awesome things called token extensions that exist on the Solana blockchain, which I'm going to let Michael describe because he knows them way better than I do.
Well, it's just, looking at what Roughrider is it's a true permissioned asset on the permissionless network. And I know it sounds like buzzwords, but really to really break it down in its simplest form is the permissioned asset is in its name, right? It's permissioned. That asset can only be utilized with either the financial institutions or some, maybe in some future use cases, your customers that are essentially granted access to utilize Roughrider stablecoin. And then on the permissionless network, so that's the Solana blockchain. So anybody can utilize the Solana blockchain. Where we are gaining much comfort is knowing that our guardrails and our permission and controls within the infrastructure. So as you know, we are partnering with Fiserv. And they are providing us a great vendor stack. And all of these vendors specialize in their own specific category within this vendor stack. And so we have controls on the asset side itself, and we have controls on the wallet side itself. And going back to where Devon was talking about, you start looking at token extensions, and that's really built into the Solana network. And just one token extension as an example is a permanent delegate. And if someone were to access Roughrider stablecoin that wasn't allowed to access Roughrider stablecoin, and with permanent delegate, since we would technically be owners of Roughrider stablecoin, we can actually take that Roughrider stablecoin out of their wallet in the event of some sort of fraud attack. So that's where we are gaining much comfort on now that's again permission and controls on the asset side, and then you look at the wallet infrastructure. Think of a wallet as a mailbox. Anyone can send something to you. And then it's up to you on if you technically want to receive it and essentially bring it home. And how our wallets are set up is with a smart contract. And so how that is going to work is any assets that are not Roughrider stablecoin would be automatically frozen and sent to a quarantine wallet, knowing that our financial institutions, if they elect to sign up for Roughrider stablecoin, they are electing to just sign up to utilize that wallet for Roughrider stablecoin. They don't want any other assets in that wallet.
Yeah, no free Bitcoin in case somebody got some accidentally sent to their wallet.
Okay, so if I understand, if we're using the Roughrider coin and it's a permissioned network.
Yep.
So if it's permission, and let's say that I am going to utilize this, but one of the other banks in North Dakota, let's say, is not actually has opted in, let's say. So you're saying that potentially, because I don't know that when I ship this off to that, it goes into quarantine and then you net it, or kind of explain how this is going to happen if there is an acceptable bank in there, but then also if there's maybe not one in there, if that goes into quarantine, I guess, if that makes sense.
No, so that's a really good question. And it's really good to have that clarity. So if once you go into B&D Access, the only addresses you'll be able to see are ones that have opted in already. So you wouldn't have the capability to accidentally send it to a wallet that we haven't okayed yet. The only ones you'll be able to see are the ones that we have already given the thumbs up for. The things that are quarantined, we like to call them dust. It's spam, just like your email and just like your mailbox. Anything can go into a mailbox. Those are the things that we're going to get out of there because we don't want any potential credential harvesting or anything like that to happen to you. So we want to protect you, but B, it's assets that you can't list anyway. So if somebody did accidentally, I think somebody sent Satoshi to Bitcoin on accident, or I don't know if it was on accident, but like a month ago, accidental transactions do happen. But we know you don't want that on your balance sheet, at least not in 2026. So that's what the whole that smart contract to sweep out is about.
Well, I just think of fraud and how every conversation is like, this is safer, this is faster, this is safer. Like we keep saying safer. And I keep thinking, well, when they made checks, they never thought anybody was going to fraud checks. Same with ACH and wire. Eventually the scare of the fraud and the unknown is going to catch up with us. So I just was wondering if you had any strong clarifying points of why do we think this is the safest route? Because when you see the word safer, but irreversible, and that's maybe not the Roughrider coin, maybe that's just stable coins in general, because we kind of have to narrow in. Roughrider is a little bit different than the stable coin. And so the confusion of all of this that's coming in is there's a lot of scare, there's fraud in that world. So what are your major points of like, why is this safer? And I shouldn't be concerned from bank to bank.
Absolutely. And yeah, not really. I mean, there's a few stable coins out there that are similar, right? But there's really no stable coin out there that is going to be similar to our product, Roughrider Coin. Going back to our permission and controls, we have permission and controls on the asset, and we have permission and controls on the wallet. You look at some other stable coins out there, not gonna name any names, but any consumer facing, consumer adopted stable coin out there, a lot of them are not going to be Genius compliant. A lot of them are not going to be a permissioned asset. So they're going to be running on the permissionless network and be a permissionless asset. So we're kind of comparing apples to oranges there.
We're running up on our time. Charlotte, is there any other questions that you'd like to ask us before we wrap
there's
up?
so many questions as I put on my compliance hats, and say, you are doing the know your customer, but you are also, are you doing the third party vendor management, that kind of thing. But then also, looking forward to what you guys are going to offer us in regards to how those bases are covered, who's providing us with that compliance. Because when the examiner walks in and they say, Charlotte, who's doing this, this, and this, they're going to look at me. I'm not going to get to just say, ask B&D. Like, that isn't going to work.
Absolutely.
So I want to make sure that that's covered. And then also just the operational, like who's going to, train that operational. I don't want that group of people to get missed in this is their day-to-day life. So understanding how this all flows, but eventually the end game is how are you going to protect the consumer from walking out of the traditional banking style that we're used to? And I know that's not phase one. And I know you're talking to the financial institutions about what the future brings. So be good to see.
Yeah, I'll tackle the operational one real quick, and then you can tackle the compliance. Really, operationally, we want to work with every FI in North Dakota the way that we already do. When it comes to that first flyer group, we want to go to them physically and have a conversation, but then bring them to B&D as well and have a conversation and a demo of sorts to say this is the operations that you're going to have to do if you want to transact in stablecoin. To your final question. We don't know where this is going to take us. We don't know what the next 12 to 18 months look like. We want to be there for when your customer does say, hey, I need some sort of digital asset, wallet, or capability. We want to help you be able to say yes. So that's where we'd like to go. And then I'll let you tackle the compliance.
Yeah, as far as the compliance goes, going back to our vendor stack, right? We have a very strong vendor stack. So when it comes to the actual infrastructure itself, Fiserv is doing their third-party and fourth-party due diligence. Bank of North Dakota is doing their third-party and fourth-party due diligence. And so we are doing our due diligence on the infrastructure side. And then on the transactional side, right, that's really no different than what we're doing right now, because again, just looking at how this compares to a wire, ACH, and a Roughrider, they're all different rail systems. And knowing our first use case, right, I think the compliance portion and looking at the transactions themselves can get more complex if we evolve down the road with a phase 2 and phase 3. But going back to our phase 1, very simplified phase 1 approach, it really shouldn't be much different.
I appreciate that. I mean, this has been very helpful. I have, it kind of explains what it is versus what it isn't. And I think that a lot of us bankers need to know that and understand that to really get comfortable with it. Yeah. So I think this has been good. Eventually, when you want to talk about banking as a service, embedded banking, like all of the other words that I don't know what they mean, let me know.
That's what we're here for.
Sounds good. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Charlotte, for coming on today.
Thank you for listening to 701 Chain. I'm Michael Lehn.
And I'm Devon Smith. If you enjoyed this conversation, be sure to subscribe and join us next time as we continue exploring the future of banking and financial innovation.